welcome you to our May 24th, 2018 City of Palatka Commission meeting. We're going to call this meeting to order. We're going to have Minister Deron Armand, Junior Minister at Youth Minister at Mount Tabor First Baptist Church, lead us in invocation and the pledge. Will everyone please stand at this time?
Let us all bow our heads and talk to God. Father, we come before you tonight, and first of all, we want to thank you for who you are. Thank you that you are the God above all gods, that you are the almighty, everlasting Father. We thank you that you're the kind of God that loves us deeply. God, we give you all the glory, honor, and praise. We take this opportunity to invoke your presence tonight. For God, we acknowledge that we can do nothing without you. God, we know that there are some accomplishments that we've made, God, and some strides that we've made and some advancements we made, but we acknowledge that we could not have done it without you. For God, you said in your word that the steps of a good man are ordered by you. So we thank you tonight that you have gotten us to where we are. And Father, we invoke your presence for your wisdom and for your guidance and for your understanding. We take this opportunity to acknowledge you, for you said in your word that if we acknowledge you in all of our ways, that you would direct our paths. So, Father, I pray for our city. I pray for our commissioners. I pray for our city leaders. I pray for everyone that is involved in making decisions for our community. Father, I pray for your wisdom and for your guidance in the name of Jesus. I pray, God, that you would give us exactly what we need so that we have a city, God, that is first of all pleasing in your sight, God. And God, likewise, a city that is walking together in unity, Father, in the name of Jesus. And God, we acknowledge that you're the only one that can do it. So God, crown us with understanding, I pray. And Father, let love abound in this community in the mighty name of Jesus. And at the end of the day, God, may you get all the glory, the honor, and the praise. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you again, Minister Armand. Roll call, please.
Mayor Hill,
Here.
Commissioner Bora,
Present.
Commissioner Campbell,
Present.
Commissioner McCaskill. Here. Vice Mayor Mary Lawson Brown is absent. You do have a quorum.
Thank you. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at the minutes from the May 10th, 2018 meeting?
So moved. Second.
There's a motion on the floor in a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item 1 of the agenda. Item 1 of the agenda is public recognitions and presentations. First up, we have one student of the month who's here with us. She didn't get an opportunity to be with us at the last meeting. May 2018 Palatka High School Student of the Month is going to be Megan Lingle. So again, Megan is here, and she's joined by our principal, J.T. Stout. And so, Megan, we always like to have our students come in. And I'm going to tell you the same thing that we tell all the students as they come in. About 37, 38 years ago, my third grade teacher, Ms. Green, gave us something, and we did it every day. It simply says, I am somebody. My mind can't conceive it, and my heart can't believe it. I know I can achieve it because I am somebody. And you are someone. You're someone special. You're someone who's taken education very seriously, and you represent Black High School very well. Today, we congratulate you, and don't let anyone stop you from being your best, but don't think you're better than anyone as well. Thank you. If we don't recognize the family members that are coming back in today, would you please stand so that we can recognize you? Because it truly takes a village to raise a child.
Absolutely.
You step out, we'll take a picture.
Congratulations, Megan.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Misha Johns, Putnam County Library Assistant.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Misha Johns. As I said, I'm from the Putnam County Library System, and I'm here to talk a little bit about what we've got going on in the library this summer. We've got a lot of events, but our biggest one coming up is going to be the kickoff for the Summer Library Reading Program, and that's going to be at 10 o'clock next Saturday, June the 2nd. So at that event, we're also going to have balloon twisting. We're going to have music, clowns, popcorn, shaved ice. But what we're doing for this one that's really special is we're teaming up at Palatka Library with the Kiwanis, the Early Learning Coalition, and Hope FM, and we're going to have a toddler preschool fest. It's going to be kind of like a resources fair to help parents see what kind of resources are out there in the community for their toddlers and their preschoolers. It's going to be a fantastic event, again, June the 2nd from 10 o'clock in the morning. And on that same day, we're also going to have our Summer Library Reading Program kickoff. And that's going to be happening at all 5 of our branches. A couple of our other branches are also having some special events that day. If you're near Melrose, they're going to have a Dalton breakfast, and they're going to have a Song of the Sea program with Greenland. And then if you're over in Interlaken, they're going to have a guest duo called Chuck and Harry for a show called Music and Fun. So that's all coming up again on June the 2nd. That's Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning. All summer long, we're also going to be having all kinds of events for our teenagers. So we're going to be having Lego Builders competition, creative writing and art competition. We're looking to get our makerspace kicked off, and we're hoping to get an annual magazine, a literary magazine, by our teenagers, for our teenagers, published at our library. So we're looking for submissions for all kinds of essays, stories, 2D like drawing and printed art that we can put in the magazine. And we're accepting submissions until July 21st for that. SWAT and Dave Powell are also coming to Crescent City and Palatka and Interlaken. They're going to be having a program called Seven Habits of Highly Effective Teens. And that's going to be kind of helping our teenagers deal with some very difficult problems and questions that are coming up in their lives nowadays. We're also going to be having hands-on makerspace projects. I've said that before. Makerspaces where we encourage our people to not only be consumers of their entertainment, but creators of it as well. So our makerspace provides hands-on experiences with 3D printers, robot kits, makey music making kits, and all kinds of things to help your creativity grow. One of our really cool programs we're having is a how-to fest, and this is initially aimed at adults, but really kind of for everybody. So we're going to have a lot of workshops this summer, everything from line dancing to diabetic cooking classes, creative writing classes, and it's going to be a little difficult to figure out which one of these you should go to. We're kind of hoping you won't choose and you'll just go to all of them, but not everybody can do that. So if you can't do all of them, you can go to our how-to fest. Again, we're going to have one at every branch, and it's kind of like these little 5 to 10 minute mini tasting workshops where you get to kind of test out the things and see if you like them and want to commit yourself to the full classes, all of which again are free and open to the public. Our big thing this summer is going to be our Summer Library Reading Program Storytime. It's 6 weeks of story times at all 5 branch locations at Palatka, Interlaken, Crescent City, Bostwick, and Melrose. They're all going to have one story time for 5 and under and one story time for 5 to 10 or 11. So each week, we're going to be following a theme this year, and it's going to be the beat of the world. Our theme is Libraries Rock, and we're going to be taking our music all over the world. So each week, we're going to learn about an instrument, a little bit of the history of that instrument, with a country where it was created. So we're going to be traveling to Ghana, Malawi, Cuba, Japan, over a dozen different countries around the world. We're going to be reading stories about instruments, some of which are thousands of year old fairy tales about where the instruments came from, or like magical instruments that saved the village. Some of them are real, like a young girl in Cuba who dreamed of playing the drum when girls weren't allowed to play drums, and she ended up playing for the president one day. So some of these stories are very inspirational. Every week, 6 weeks, we're going to be doing drums, song and dance, flutes, strings, and our last one's going to be about guitars. We're doing 2 weeks of drums because they're super cool. And during these, we're going to have story time, crafts, we're going to sing songs in Japanese. We're going to sing a really cool song in Japanese about a mischievous little forest spirit who hears a priest playing a prayer drum and thinks it's an invitation to a drumming competition and wants to culture and some music. Our last week is going to be a big pool party for all of our summer library reading program participants with live music, and it's going to be a ton of fun. So all the information and all of our scheduling is available on our website. It's Fun in Putnam, all one word, funinputnam.com. And when you get there, you can read all of our brochures and get a hold of all of our schedule of all of our fantastic events for everybody of all ages. And I hope to see everybody there. If you have children, if you want to come to some yourself, if your neighbor has kids, if your friends has kids, gather them up, bring them down to the library. It's going to be a wonderful time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can you pass that information along, or we can put it on our website as well as maybe the county site too? We need to make sure that they get published.
Absolutely.
And Commissioner Campbell usually shares it on
What would be
social
the best way to get that to? This is a bullet point list. It's not really very. I can give it to her.
Do you have any kind of flyer that you would be able to?
I can actually have them email the PDF flyers, the original ones. If you want this just for information, you can have it. But I'll have Mr. Yates, who designed all of our flyers and everything, send down up.
Yeah.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to employee recognition. We've got an employee retirement at this time. It's Mr. Johnny Lewis here. I don't see Mr. Lewis, but we'll make sure that we recognize him in any regards and get his plaque over to him. This plaque is presented to Johnny Lewis, Sanitation Department, front loader driver, a grateful recognition of 16 years of outstanding service to the citizens of Palatka, September 26, 2002 through May 17, 2018. City of Palatka City Commission, May 24, 2018. Let's give a round of applause for Johnny Lewis. Mr. Poston, can you join me? Employee recognitions have become a new tradition around here, reinstituted by Mr. Zariah Poston, who's our city manager, and I'll let Mr. Poston call out the names for the employee recognitions.
At 28 years of service, we have William Neely, Sanitation. Is Mr. Neely here? At 10 years of service, we have Quentin Lindsay from Sanitation. At 10 years of service, we also have Patrick O'Neill from Sanitation. At 7 years of service, we have Justin Hale, Police Department.
Chief, will you come take this one?
At 7 years of service, also with the Police Department, we have Bobby Conyers. And then lastly, with 7 years of service, we have Kenneth Eubanks from Sanitation. We'll make sure that they all get their certificates and they know that they are appreciated by us here at the City of Palatka, and we thank them so much for their service.
Now we move on to item 2 of the agenda, which is our public comments. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. No action will be taken on topics of discussion. Is there anyone here for public comment? If you are here for public comment, please fill out a speaker card in the back of the room so that you can be recognized. Seeing no one here for public comment, we'll close public comment. We'll move on to our consent agenda. Under our consent agenda, we have items A through G. On the consent agenda, are there any items that you wish to have removed?
Motion to approve items A through G.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Questions called. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to public hearing. Public hearing, first up is item 4 under our public hearing, which is the Florida DEO 2018 CDBG Disaster Recovery Initiative DRI Program, Fred Fox Enterprises. Item A is the resolution authorizing submission of an application for funding through the 2018 CDBG Disaster Recovery Initiative Program to DEO for funding allocated for Hurricane Hermine and Matthew.
First of all, I'm going to pass around 2 sign-in sheets. One is for this public hearing, one is for the next agenda item. So if each of you sign both of these, please. before Hurricanes Matthew and Hermine, they allocated enough where the Department of Economic Opportunities put $22,408,000 and $408,030 on the street for projects that were impacted to correct damage and to correct future damage that would be done on areas that were impacted by Matthew and Hermine. Really didn't impact this area as much as Matthew did. It's a really short application cycle. They opened it the first of this month. Applications are due in Tallahassee at the end of the month. The primary activity is dealing with housing that was damaged by the storm. We put a notice in the paper on the 15th of this month through city staff asking people to pick up applications. It was a one-page application. We did have several picked up and none have been returned. And once you documented the home had been damaged, either by the owner getting a FEMA funding for the correction of the damage, or from the private insurer providing funding for correction of damage, then you could actually take and do whatever you needed to do that home, to bring that home up to code, get it above flood elevation. But the initial thing was documenting that it was damaged by that storm. And this is limited. 70% of the funds have to be used for low moderate income households. Unlike regular CDBG, this could be for either owner-occupied housing units or rental housing units. If rental housing units were addressed, there would have to be rental agreements put in place where they would keep it as affordable rental for a certain number of years, depending on how much was expended on the home. The bottom line is, we put it out there. I think you had 5 people pick up applications, nobody's returned them. So that is the priority, and understand that if the state gets enough applications for housing projects, that as far as the money will go, they will fund those first. If they don't, the second area is dealing with infrastructure projects, again, that were impacted by Hurricane Matthew, i.e. an area where you had significant rain and it was flooding. Or there was sewage backup because of the event, and you're trying to correct that. And once again, once you get into, unlike some of the FEMA funds, once you get into, hey, we had this problem, and we've taken care of the immediate problem, but we're going to have it next time if we don't expand our system. You can expand your system with these funds. This page is just when I talk about low moderate income, that's just a chart for Putnam County of what constitutes low moderate income. It's based on household size. This is the current one. It came out a month ago, and it is for just Putnam County. The points in the application are if someone has capacity to manage the grant, it's 35 points. Readiness to proceed, you have plans ready, it's 25 points. If you've got a cost reasonable budget by their estimate, they mean DEO's estimation, that's 25. If it adds to the storm resiliency, that's 15. If it overall benefits low moderate income households, that's 50. And then overall housing eligible activity would be 30. Again, housing is going to be the priority. And then if you deal with vulnerable populations, i.e., you could use these grants, for instance, to build a homeless shelter, that kind of thing. So it has a lot more uses than the regular small cities program. But that's the presentation on this one. I think Jonathan's got, where's Jonathan? Oh, there you are. Jonathan's got some recommendations of a possible infrastructure project that you might want to look at.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Fred. Commissioners, Hurricane Irma and Matthew brought to light some additional flooding areas that we haven't been able to get funding for. One specifically is the South 14th Street area from St. John's Avenue to Krill get a lot of surface runoff that ends up on one street at the bottom of the hill, South 14th Street. Some of those residences are actually lower than the street. So we would be looking at building stormwater conveyance as well as some retention, dry retention basin areas, or either some exfiltration storage in those areas. The other project that we discussed is system-wide sanitary infiltration and inflow. We would be looking at lining manholes and lining some of the old clay lines and even replacing some of the gravity sewer lines to cut down on the amount of sand and groundwater and rainwater that enters the sewer system, which eventually results in either sand in your aeration basins and your ability to treat and eventually overflow into the river, and sewer backups to residential and commercial properties. Are there any other projects that you would like us to consider?
Anything from the commission? Seeing that, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sturgis, can you read the caption for the resolution?
This is a public hearing, so you need to open it up in case of any citizens that want to.
I need to read the caption for the resolution first.
Okay.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Palatka, Florida, authorizing the submission of an application for funding through the 2018 Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Initiative, CDBG-ERI program. Said application to be submitted to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity for the funding allocated for Hurricanes Hermione and Matthew.
So moved. Got a motion on the floor?
So move.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. We're now open the floor for public hearing. Is there anyone here for public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll close public hearing. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question call, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item 5, first public hearing, CDBG Small Cities Application Cycle, fiscal year 2017. Mr. Fox.
Good evening again. We're actually finishing up the current small city CDBG project, which was the parking lot at Riverfront, and basically eliminating Moore Street and bringing River Strip around. That should be finished. The construction's actually finished. We're in the process of closing it out. The 17 cycle is scheduled to open the 27th of June, with applications due sometime the second week in August. The city's eligible to apply for up to $750,000. There's no advantage for applying for less than the full $750,000. There's 4 categories: housing rehabilitation, and that typically would be limited to owner-occupied, low-income households. 3-year households would need to be extremely low income at 30% of median or less. 2 would need to be between 30 and 50% of median, and the rest could be anywhere to 80% of median. And the typical housing program is about 10 to 12 homes. So it's, again, once you establish you're going to address a house, you're going to deal with all the code violations. If that means that you end up tearing down the house and replacing it, that's allowable as well. But that's one option. The second is commercial revitalization. The project that we're finishing up is actually a commercial revitalization project. They typically do about 2 a year. So there's fairly about 5% of the funds are allocated for that. But in order to qualify, a community has got to be 51% low moderate income, typically have a CRA, so it's limited to a few communities that actually meet the criteria for the program. Third category is neighborhood revitalization. That's where the bulk of the funds go. Basically replacing water lines in low moderate income areas, replacing sewer lines, drainage, community centers, parks, our typical neighborhood revitalization projects. And that's the biggest piece of the pot. It's about 40% of it. And then economic development is where you've got a project where you have a business that needs to expand or wants to come in and needs infrastructure. The last one we did here was the bowling alley that was closed, and we ran sewer to the bowling alley from the city. Initially had his own package plant, but he was forced to shut down, and so he was able to reopen the bowling alley. That was the last one we've done here. We do quite a few of those, but that's a separate category. You would apply one of the first 3, and then down the road, if you had an economic development project, you could also submit an application in that category. But in the first 3, it's one of the 3, and then you you got to wait to close out your grant till you apply again. Again, this is the same chart of when we talk about extreme low income, moderate income. These are the figures for Putnam County for this area. The process is based, this is a leverage. The leverage, for every $2,000 you invest in the project, you get a point. It's a point system, it's a competition. Up to 25 points or $50,000 that you spend after the project is funded. In the non-neighborhood revitalization category and the commercial revitalization category, there used to be 100 points if you went in shovel-ready. They reduced that to 50. They moved the other 50 over to basically, if you've got a consent order on your sewer plant, they've increased the amount you get for dealing with that consent order by 35 additional points, and the other 15 they just put in some of the other areas in the application. If you go in shovel-ready, that's on your dime. You get funded. It's not reimbursable, but it does get you that extra 50 points, which gets you a much better chance of being funded. So the process is basically, you appointed a citizens group. They met. I'm going to have their recommendation to you after you close the public hearing portion of this agenda item. Then you're holding the first public hearing this evening. That's what we're doing. We're going to hold a fair housing workshop tonight at this agenda item. And then we'll come back before the applications are due in August and give you a detailed explanation with a budget of the project you're going to develop, direct us to develop. And you'll also tonight, hopefully, give us direction on the project you want us to develop for you, working with Jonathan and the engineers. So that's basically the presentation. I'm glad to answer any questions you got.
You have a copy of that presentation? I didn't see it in the agenda. Can we're going to need to get a copy of that. Do you have that electronically?
Yeah, I think that
It's in the agenda.
I was looking through. I don't know if I must have
There
overlooked
are
it.
3 separate public hearings, so go to the next item.
Okay.
And you'll see the PowerPoints for all 3 of these.
Okay, I was just looking down through there, and thanks, appreciate it. You can get that back then. You can get it back then. I just didn't see
Either way,
it.
it's fine.
I didn't see it in the presentation when I was looking at it.
I can make you all hard copies.
No, I mean, if I got it here, I'm good.
if there's no questions, the next step would be there's no resolution. The next step would be to open the public hearing.
Mr. Hirsch,
Oh, there's no resolution.
at this time, I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. We'll now open the floor for public hearing. Is there anyone here for public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll close public hearing. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Questions, call all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously.
You want to discuss what the project is?
Right. You guys have already voted on the resolution for the very first public hearing. This is the second public hearing, so
There is no resolution for this.
no resolution for this one, but you do want to let them know what the recommendation was.
After Jonathan does
Okay.
He does his presentation.
And there's a format the EO wants us to follow, so that's why I'm trying to follow.
Commissioners, the project we're proposing is an extension of the current initiative to renew water lines in the downtown core. This project was actually proposed under the last cycle, but the commission at the time decided to go with a commercial category grant instead of a neighborhood grant. This area is generally referred to by staff as Palatka Heights Area 2, which is bounded by St. John's Avenue, Mosley, Twig, and generally the railroad there to the east. This area has lines from 1886. There is a smaller enclave area around Laurel Street and Gillett Street and south 17th, I believe, that has actually been renewed, so that won't be included in the project. Staff is proposing this project because we already have engineering in place. Are there any questions?
No questions. Was there any consideration given for housing rehab projects?
Not from the citizens group, not this time. I know there's been a need for it, this commission has talked about it in the past, but it was not something they, citizens group actually, in their meeting, voted to recommend a project.
Thank you. Let's move on to item 6, the fair housing workshop.
Okay, and once again, I got another sign-in sheet. I know you like doing that so much, so I'll just pass it. And this is actually part of the requirement. There's points for having the fair housing workshop in the application process for CDBG. This fair housing is one of the things that HUD has been tasked with carrying out. Okay. Basically, the Fair Housing Act was initially adopted at the federal level in 1968. It was amended in 1988. It was amended again in 1995. And currently, the way it's structured, the Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination due to an individual's race, their color, religion, national origin, sex, familial status, which means that if you have children living with them, you can't discriminate against their family or if they're the legal guardians of your children. And also for disability. By the way, as I go through here, when it gets to addresses and stuff like that, I'm going to jump over that, but I've got copies of this. And if anybody would like a copy or to talk about it with me in more detail, just let me know and I'll be glad to do that with you. The Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination and the intimidation of people in their homes, apartments, and condominium developments, in nearly all housing transactions, including the rental and sale of housing, and the provision of mortgage broker loans. What housing is exempt? The Act exempts owner-occupied buildings with no more than 4 units, and single-family housing sold or rented without the use of a broker. Senior housing exemption exempts some senior housing facilities and communities from liability for familial status discrimination, provided under any state or federal program that HUD has determined to be specifically designed and operated to assist elderly persons or intended for and solely occupied by persons 55 or 62 years of age or older. What is prohibited? No one may take any of the following actions based on race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, or national origin. They cannot refuse to rent or sell housing, refuse to negotiate for housing, set different terms, conditions, or privileges for sale or rental of a dwelling. Falsely deny that housing is available for inspection, sale, or rental. For-profit persuade or try to persuade homeowners to sell or rent dwellings by suggesting that people of a particular race, etc., have moved or are about to move into the neighborhood, or deny any person access to, membership, or participation in any organization, facility, or service related to the sale or rental of dwellings. Housing protection for families with children. It is unlawful to discriminate against a person whose household includes one or more children who are under 18 years of age. That's what's known as familial status, in which one or should be more minor children have lived with a parent or legal custodian. Additional protections if you have a disability. If you have a physical or mental disability, including hearing, mobility, and visual impairments, cancer, chronic mental illness, or HIV/AIDS, that substantially limits one or more major life activities, are regarded as having such a disability a housing provider may not refuse to let you make reasonable modifications to your dwelling at your expense. A landlord may permit changes only if you agree to restore the property to its original condition when you move. An example would be a building with a no pet policy must allow a visually impaired tenant to have a guide dog. However, the Fair Housing Act does not protect the person who is a direct threat to the health or safety of others or who currently uses illegal drugs. If you want to file a description of the illegal violation, the event in a college you believe your rights were violated, the dates of the illegal violation. Your local ordinance includes steps and timetables in which complaints must be submitted and responses must be provided at the local level as well. I've got that ordinance number a little further in the packet. Basically, if you want to file a complaint with HUD, this is the address of the HUD regional office. Again, I'm not going to go over the whole address, but I do have copies of this for anybody that would like them. And anybody that would like to sit down with me and go over it, I'd be glad to do that. And this is what happens when you file a complaint. It's the steps that they would go through. They notify the person, filing the complaint, and the alleged violator responding to give them a chance to respond. They would investigate. They notify the complainant and the respondent if HUD cannot complete the investigation within 100 days of filing the complaint and provide reason for delay. And there is a Fair Housing Act conciliation. During the complaint investigation, HUD is required to offer you and the respondent the opportunity to voluntarily resolve your complaint with a consolable agreement. There's also an address at the state level that you can file a complaint, and this gives you the phone number, toll-free number, and the website for the Florida Commission on Human Relations. And then there's also a local ordinance that was passed. The City of Palatka has adopted provisions for fair housing in the city's fair housing ordinance, which was adopted December 8th of 1983. It was amended on December 12th, 1985, replacing the category physically handicapped, which is the word handicap, and again on September 27th, 1990, adding the categories familial status. And basically the city process is that complaints must be submitted in writing within 60 days of the incident. The city would review, give 30-day notification for response investigative period. If the city felt the complaint was justified, they would forward it to the state attorney's office. And again, the city has those ordinances on file if you'd like a copy. And that is the presentation on fair housing. Let me answer any questions. There is no action taken on the board on that.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Mr. Parks.
Moving on to item 7 of the agenda, the Black Housing Authority Board, 2 applicants for 4-year term to expire April 2022. This item was tabled until today. The applicants are Brenda Bivens, who's the incumbent, and also James P. Jim Neshowitz, who's an attorney, local attorney here in town. I had an opportunity to talk to Ms. Bivens, who travels very limitedly. She's been on the board. She indicated that she's been on the board. She wanted me to relate to the commission. She's been on the board. She was appointed by former Mayor Vernon Myers to the board. And also an opportunity, and her biggest concern was making sure that she could empower the residents. I asked her what was her biggest concern. She said she wanted to be able to empower the residents so that one day they could transition from public housing into private housing. And they felt as though they were moving in that direction. I also had an opportunity to talk to John Nelson, and as you know before, his retirement is upon us in June. They are in the process of the Housing Authority of going through their selection process. I think their interview process started, if I'm correct, on June 4th. So they are deeply within the interview process at this time. For our requirements, it's my obligation to make a recommendation. Pursuant to the fact that we are within that process of selecting new leadership, Ms. Bivens has been a faithful member, even through sickness, of the Housing Authority Board. My recommendation to this commission is that we retain Ms. Bivens for another 4-year term.
Okay. With her, I have a question. With her limited, with her sickness, will she be able to carry out the duties? And even if we say to the point of taking your recommendation, but allowing her to see through the selection process, because I have a great concern with her illness that she won't be able to carry out the duties for another 4 years.
That's kind of I asked her about that. She said she served at the will of the commission. She believed that she can continue to serve in the capacity that she served. I know the Housing Authority meets on a regular basis. They've had a number of special meetings on a monthly basis. She's been in attendance
why wasn't she able to come to this meeting
In the previous,
as well as the meeting before?
She said because of her health conditions, it didn't allow her to travel at certain times. So again, my recommendation stands. At this time, I'll entertain a motion from the commission if there's no other discussion.
I have a question. I mean,
For me, I know that they're knee deep in the selection process, so I would definitely not want to bring someone in that would prevent them from being able to move forward, especially being that we're at a position to where Mr. Nelson is exiting very soon. I would like to see her carry out the duties, but again, that's just in the forefront of my mind for 4 years that
is this something that we have to vote on tonight and as it relates to this situation? Because I would like to understand and know that Ms. Bivens would be able to serve in that capacity for the next 4 years.
I think there's a rebuttable presumption that she'd be willing to serve in the capacity based upon the fact that she filled out the application to serve for an additional term. I will caution the board, it's not our job to determine what somebody's health position is. The fact that she's brought up. So can I finish, please, sir? I'm under the position that I asked her the question, would she be able to serve in the same capacity? She, in all intents and purposes, said that her record of service should speak for itself. I asked the questions as it pertained to that, and she said that she can continue to serve in that capacity, and she wished to serve in that capacity. And so that's the information that I have before me. The board does not have the obligation of making the commission does not have the obligation of making a recommendation at this time. You have the ability to table it for whatever period of time you choose to, or take no action until such time that the commission chooses to take action. I'm merely giving the recommendation based upon what guidelines I've been given.
I'll make a motion that we table this down into the selection process of the new CEO of the Housing Authority is done, and we bring this matter back, and that'll also give us time to have the same conversations with Ms. Bivens as well as Mr. Nelson as well.
Second.
Question, when does her term expire?
Expired. Sorry, it's expired.
Wow.
Well, can't she continue to serve then? I mean, her term has expired, so
It's
technically.
expired, but as you pointed out, unless someone is appointed to serve in her stead, and you can correct this because you're the attorney, she continues to serve.
It depends upon the wording of the ordinance. I don't have it in front of me, but if it says if it says that her appointment is for a term of X years or until her successor is appointed, then I agree with you. She would continue to serve until a successor is appointed. If it just says she's a 4-year term, then when the term expires, she's out.
For the purposes of clarification, Commissioner Campbell, is it your intent that Ms. Bivens continue to serve in that capacity until such time as this is brought back before us?
Yes, sir.
Second.
Was that and is that friendly to the second?
Second.
And I second it. At this time, I'm entertaining a motion to allow Ms. Bivens to continue to serve in her capacity as a member of the Plaquemine Housing Authority Board until such time as we reconvene on this issue after a CEO has been selected for the Housing Authority. Is that everyone's understanding of the motion?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, questions called. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item 8, request for waiver of all special event fees for Memorial Day Parade. Stan Owens, American Legion Post 45. Mr. Owens, welcome. It's always good to see the veterans here.
Thank you. I appreciate what you do for our veterans. The Blue Crab Festival, I'm Stan Owens. I'm representing the American Legion Post 45, 316 Osceola Street, Palatka, Florida. And in the past, and I'm here to talk about the Memorial Day Parade. The Blue Crab Festival was an umbrella which also covered the parade as far as permits and cost and everything. And with the cancellation and the reinstatement and the recancellation of the Blue Crab Festival, we were told that we had to have a permit for the parade, which normally was handled by the Blue Crab Festival. So we scrambled and we got filled out for a permit, which you just passed, special events permit 1827, just a few minutes ago. We thank you. We've been kind of hoping that we'll be able to get that, but we're still worried about it. The request that we have here is listed as for a waiver of all special events fees for Memorial Day Parade. And because we don't have that much money amongst our veteran groups, it was kind of a last minute thing. Also, we'd like to request some good weather for Monday, or there may not be a parade. Got a few diehards, I'm sure. Anyway, if there is going to be a cost to us, we do need to know it. Does anyone be able to tell us if you're unable to?
It's in the agenda.
What is the normal cost for that portion of, if the Blue Crab normally used to carry them for the most part, and I'd just like to know what those permit fees would be if they wanted to host that themselves.
Before we get to that, quick question. The only fees are $345, correct?
For police.
I've heard that number.
Just for police, that's the only fee that's there, correct? That's the only fee, $345?
I heard that figure, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think you may have some sponsorship for $345 from a private sector as opposed to the commission, if you're willing to have them pay that fee.
Could you repeat that?
Somebody's going to help sponsor that for you.
Private donor.
If you're okay with a private donor helping sponsor that.
I would appreciate any
There
donation.
there are a couple that's willing to help sponsor that for you, if you're okay with that.
We are okay with that.
All right.
We speak for 4 veteran organizations, actually.
Are you okay with us removing this item from the agenda, since that's going to be taken care of?
I help contribute to that as well. I mean, I piggyback.
All right,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
as well.
So we'll contribute.
We'll
Okay.
get with you.
And so I'll entertain a motion to
I'll make a motion.
to deny the request.
I make a motion. Second.
To remove.
Well, why we table it?
Because it just lays on the table.
We don't want to.
Oh, just don't bring it.
Why don't you just remove it from
We're
the
gonna
agenda?
remove,
Yeah.
I make a motion that we remove item number 8 from the agenda.
Second.
Motion for the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
You covered. Carries unanimously. All right, you covered.
Look at what you're saying.
We'll work with you.
See us after the meeting.
You,
See us after the meeting because we also want to be a part of contributing.
you be
Yes,
Or if you're gonna leave, then let us know and we'll
yeah,
get
we'll contact you.
we'll,
That was pretty easy, wasn't
Mandy, you get the information just to consider what I'm saying.
Thanks.
Moving on to item
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 9 on the agenda, discussion of honorary street name designation, request for 10th Street from Reed, U.S. Highway 17 to Bronson Street as D.A. Boyd Place, Reverend Dr. Walter Monroe for the family. Welcome, Dr. Monroe.
Thank you so very much for the introduction.
And just for the record, can you say your name and your address for us?
Before we do that, Honorable Mayor Hill and to our commissioners, and to all the city officials, we're grateful to be here. My name is Walter Monroe, Jr. I'm the proud grandson of D.A. Boyd, Sr., who is now deceased. To give you a little background of who I am, I grew up in the city of Palatka, Florida. I went to a school called Central Academy High School, which is not in existence today, but in memory. The class of 1964. That was a very powerful, very influential class. I've also attended St. John Junior College at that time, junior college, state college. And just recently, I am a retired district superintendent from the United Methodist Church in Florida. in which I had the responsibility to oversee some 70 churches over 4 counties in the state of Florida. So I want you to know I'm a product of Palatka. Wherever I go, they know who I am and where I come from. So that's who I am. And just wanted to share that with you. But I am honored to be here today. My brother, whose name appeared on your item, could not be here because of conflicts in his schedule and other issues as well. According to Brandon Creeley, he states that there are 3 types of people who inspire you. Think about that for a moment. Who are the people who inspire you? The first group of people who inspire you are the people of fame and importance. The second group of people who inspire you is similar to the first, except that instead of being distant or distinct, you get the chance to meet these people of fame and ask those burning questions that you always wanted to ask. And then the final group, and the most important, are the people within your personal circle of friends and family. I want to pause at this point now to acknowledge some persons who have come with us, our family and supporters of what we're doing here this evening. And I would like, Mayor, if you would allow me to have them stand to recognize these individuals, people who are members of our family and supporters of our item number 9. Would you stand for a moment, please, for recognition? These are family members. This shows you the commitment. This is our first appearance coming before you, and so therefore we need your guidance also as we try to process what we're doing. But the person who we want to lift up, and I want to use a scripture, and I'm not taking a text, just for the record. It says these words: give honor where it's in your power. When is it in your power to do it? Give honor. So we want to honor a special person who was a visionary, who went before us and paved the way. And today, on 924 Reed Street, you have a facility called the D.A. Boyd and Sons Funeral Home. The name I'm referring to is Mr. David A. Boyd, Sr. Let me say from the outset that my grandfather, we often called him Big Daddy, because he was a big daddy to all of our family growing up. He was born in Orangeburg, South Carolina. During his late teens, he served for 3 years in the Spanish-American War. He completed his public education in South Carolina and graduated from Claflin College, which is now University, in Orangeburg, South Carolina. He later moved to Jacksonville, Florida, and became a mail carrier and operated a small store on Ashley Street for many years. He was later united in holy matrimony to Mary Lou Shaw. In 1930, he moved to Palatka and took his son's funeral home business, and the rest is history. Before we became very used of the name mentors, I can say with no feeling of contradiction that he was a mentor to me and my family. He was like a father, a big daddy, who stood in the place of my father. And during the 60s, and some of you probably remember, that was a difficult time socially, economically, politically, etc. But he stepped in the gap, and because of that, many of the accomplishments that many of you saw people standing a few moments ago can contribute to the contributions and the significance of what he has done in the life of all of us. And so we lift that matter up as well. He was a very important person. Mr. Boyd was a licensed funeral director and owner of the D.A. Boyd and Sons Funeral Home until his death in December 24, 1965. His wife, Mrs. Mary Lou Boyd, became the owner of the establishment until her death January 27, 1977. The ownership was later passed down to other members of the family, including the latest member who just deceased, Mr. Charlie Boyd, who went on to be with the Lord several weeks ago. Currently, the CEO of the Boyd's Funeral Home is Mr. Joseph T. Monroe, and he's here. Would you wave your hand, Joe? He's currently taking the mantle now, and we pray for him that God will continue to give him wisdom and knowledge to lead us to the next tier, in which whatever God has in store. As a result of the contribution of D.A. Boyd Sr., today there are 5 funeral homes located in the state of Florida. One in Palatka, which I alluded to earlier, Winter Haven, Plant City, which is recent, Fort Lauderdale, and Fort Myers. So the legacy of D.A. Boyd continues. And what we're asking you to consider as a commission, to consider renaming the street, which is addressed at 10th Street from Reed Street, which is Highway 17, to Bronson Street. And we would like to have that street officially named D.A. Boyd Place. That is what we are recommending and asking you for guidance and direction concerning that. Let me conclude with this statement by William Penn. I expect to pass through this life but once. If therefore be any kindness I can show, or any good that I can do to any fellow being, let me do it now, for I shall not pass this way again. Brother Mayor, I'm at your disposal, councilman at your disposal for direction and guidance. This is what we're advocating, and we just need some direction and insight as to the steps that we need to take. But we're committed, and we hope that all of you here will support us in this commitment.
First of all, thank you, Dr. Monroe, for the presentation. I don't think this commission is by any way a stranger to the accomplishments of D.A. Boyd, and also what the D.A. Boyd Funeral Home and family has meant to this community. Mr. Charlie Boyd was a dear friend of mine, and we definitely miss him. But we also understand how strong of a family the Boyd family is and the legacy that's left. I remember as a young kid hearing about Mr. Boyd in 1922, having a boxing society as well that went along with the funeral home, and also creating what today, one of the concepts today that's prepaid funeral concepts back in the 30s. And so very familiar with the history, and definitely glad that the family's here making the request as it proceeds today. I think before we take any additional comments from me, I'll ask if there are any comments from the commission.
Well, I certainly appreciate all that the Boyd family has done for this community. I had the opportunity to work with Mr. Charles Boyd out at Georgia Pacific, and the things that flourish from your organization, the people that you all mentored and trained and helped move on to moving their businesses. I think you all have done a great service to our community and others. So I certainly support the effort.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I echo the same sentiments. I know Mr. Charlie, and our family worked with Boyd for quite some time, and always professional, always had a smile every time we encountered Mr. Charlie. And the work that he's done is still continuously speaking, hence the reason why we're here at this very moment. So we're forever grateful for what the Boyd family has contributed to Palatka and Putnam County and the state of Florida as a whole with their professional services and funeral services.
Thank you so much.
I too appreciate all that the Boyd family has done. It's amazing when you can travel in different parts of the state and hear about the Boyd family where you go and you hear great things. I haven't had the opportunity to work with the Boyd family, but just the love and the service and support that they've given to the community, speaks volumes. So again, thanks for this, and thanks for your service.
So Dr. Monroe, there are a couple things that I discussed with your brother, and also Mr. Monroe in the back. And we had an extensive conversation to the extent that we had to take a recess after about a couple hours. But in talking about it, one of the things I can tell you that we discussed was the concept of the Freedom Trail. The Freedom Trail don't know if you're familiar, but over in St. Johns County, St. Augustine designated about 13 sites on a 2.5-mile trail, which included a lot of black businesses. It's an African-American trail of history. And that's one of the things we look at. When you look at Palatka as a whole, what you find is that there were significant pioneers, particularly during the time in which your grandfather lived. When you look at his relationship with both Mary Lawson, also the relationship with Mary McLeod Bethune, who opened up Palatka Mission School in 1899 to 1903, which is the foundation of Bethune-Cookman University. When you look at Dr. James A. Long and people of that stature, what we find is there was a significant number of African-American leaders throughout the community as a whole. And also that went along with the significant history that we had of being the original proposed site for the capital of the state of Florida, having the first accredited black high school at Central Academy. And so we talked about the concept of the Freedom Trail and creating a trail with different historic markers and a tour of site with an audible tour, also online tour, which would create more than just one location so that we can start to highlight some of the great successes, because the stories aren't told. The story Central Academy isn't told, and some of the other stories aren't told, which make people really realize what a great history there is in this community. And so we talked about that. We also talked about one of the things I think is most critical is establishing a criteria within the city of Palatka, but because there hasn't been a criteria established that would allow us to set up some standard as to how we begin to rename streets. We most recently renamed 11th Street on an honorary status as A. Philip Randolph Boulevard, and the reason, and understanding the history of A. Philip Randolph being from Crescent City, and been a national figure in civil rights, the grandfather of civil rights in so many words, and the true advisor to Dr. King. Renaming that street with an honorary name, still leaving the distinction of 11th Street. One, from a postal standpoint, it allowed us to not have to deal with the change in address for the residents in the area. They could still use their address, but and the same thing happened on 19th Street. But it also allowed us to still provide that distinction. And so those are some of the considerations that are out there. There are costs associated with changing streets overall, and also with making sure that, I see the petition, but making sure the residents of the street have an opportunity to come forward. I do think that this is the first step. It's a great step. And I think that it gives us an opportunity really to come up with, one, I think the most cost-effective way to deal with the issue, but also the way that truly memorializes the essence of who D.A. Boyd is, because it spans not from just Palatka, but to Winter Haven, all the way to South Florida. And so, and it has national acclaim, but we want to make sure that, all the steps are in place. My concern is making sure that the steps are in place so that, one, from a city standpoint, there are a number of people who've made a request to have streets named after them. There are a lot of great people who've done the streets of Palatka in many capacities, but we want to make sure that we have a standard in place which makes it difficult to have a street named after you, because this is not something that's meant for everyone who's done good things or been successful business leaders, but this is something that's done for great men, such as your grandfather. And I think that we have to make sure that those standards are in place. And so that's just my concern as we move forward, to making sure that there are standards created so that renaming of streets doesn't become second nature. It becomes something that's left only as a distinguished honor for the greatness that it means.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and all the commissioners. Your comments, we receive them graciously. I want you to know how grateful we are for your patience as we try to find the way in which we need to go in that regard. We are open, and in any way we can continue to follow up, even after this meeting is over, we will make ourselves available. Once again, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to come before you, just to speak about a man who impacted not only my life, but the life of so many people. For 5 years, I lived at 924 Reed Street. So I know what it means to live there. I know what it means have a grandfather and a grandmother who was there helping shaping the direction and most of the accomplishment, if any, that I can consider to be accomplishment, it goes back to Big Daddy.
Yes,
He
sir.
was very instrumental. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And to the family, you couldn't have picked a better person to speak. Dr. Monroe, class of 1964, my mom's classmate, man of great distinction. And there are very few people who speak with the eloquence and the dignity of Dr. Monroe, and I think you did a great job in presenting. And again, it's always great to have you guys here, and I think we're at our first steps, and we want to continue to move the ball forward so that we can memorialize, in many ways, that history that is so precious to this community. Any other comments from the commission?
Well said.
They said I talked too long.
No, you summarized it. Great summary.
So again, thank you. Next up on our agenda is item number 10, resolution accepting rankings and responses from RFQ 2018-07, lobbyist services for the city of Palatka, and authorizing the city manager to begin contract negotiations.
A resolution of the City of Palatka, Florida, confirming the ranking of lobbyist firm qualifications received in response to City of Palatka RFQ number 2018-07, lobbyist services for City of Palatka, and authorizing contract negotiations with the top-ranked respondent.
Second.
I've got unreadiness before we move forward. We're going to motion on the floor in a second. I've got some unreadiness before we move forward with our vote. Got a couple questions as I get an opportunity to review the rankings that we have before us. I guess the first question I have, how many of the firms did we actually interview? We had 3 applicants, correct?
Yes.
And of the 3 applicants, did we interview the firms?
No.
I remember distinctly sitting in as you guys were discussing what the process would be. There was a conversation as to the conversation said that you were going to interview the firms after you reviewed the applications. And so I guess my question is, why were the interviews not conducted?
Didn't see a need to conduct the interviews. We went based on us calling around the references and us calling around to contact people that they have done business with or people that we need them to work with in Tallahassee. And so several of us did make those calls, and based on that and based on what was submitted, the committee made evaluations.
So you said the people that you need them to work with in Tallahassee.
Yes.
What exactly does that mean?
Policymakers, people that they would need to engage to assist us in getting revenue for the city. Different communities, prior communities where they worked at as well, prior projects that they had solicited and got out of those communities.
How many of the applicants actually do federal work?
One that I'm aware of.
And were there any additional points that were given to anyone who did federal work as opposed to state work?
No.
Was there any consideration given to the fact that the city of Palatka has a $60 million infrastructure need as it relates to water, not counting other infrastructure, and that USDA is typically one of the main funding sources used to get that money?
No.
And so if we have federal needs that are out there and we're only dealing with state agencies, then how do we move forward with dealing with the federal needs when we don't have representation there to deal specifically with those needs based upon the rankings that we have in place?
Most of the revenues that we're trying to get for the city are coming down through the feds, but through the state system. So they're coming down through the state. And so it's more advantageous for us to have representation in Tallahassee that's going to be able to acquire funding for us.
One of the biggest issues I see that we have is the fact that we're 250 people above the rule exception as it relates to federal funding for USDA money, which is going to be significantly higher than most of the appropriations that we will receive. I have no other questions.
Do we have, I'm sorry. Mayor, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do we have current documentation with the, of revenues that the current lobbyist has brought to the city of Palaka?
There have been no revenues brought in from the current lobbyist.
So
There
what
ne-
it,
Go ahead.
No.
No, there have been no revenues brought in over the last 2 years.
Of those three, you did have one that you said that did have federal
Yes.
experience?
connection, experience, or what have you, right?
Yes.
Would that be the top rank?
No.
No?
It's
Okay.
actually your current lobbyist.
Oh, our current.
Your current lobbyist is the only one of the group that I'm aware of that had federal experience.
Would this be Becker?
Right.
Yeah, Becker lawyers. Oh, I was looking at Becker and Poliakoff. That's what I was
Becker
saying.
and Poliakoff.
So what happened to Poliakoff?
I believe it was a typo.
Okay.
They did it.
Okay.
For the past 2 years, we haven't had any revenues brought in.
Okay.
We haven't had any revenue brought in.
Okay.
If you recall this year, I don't know how engaged the process was. If you recall this year, there was a placeholder put in on the Senate side for $250,000 for water project. Water projects from the Senate side were all cut off because of the appropriations that the $500 billion that were appropriated to deal with the school safety issues. So there were no water projects funded on the Senate side. All the water projects were funded on the House side. And so we were caught in that wash. But I just wanted to make sure that all the information was on the table and related to what we have in place. At this time, I'll entertain any further discussion.
Question.
Questions called. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries by a vote of 3 to 1. We've got a representative here. Would you like to come forward at this time? Again, congratulations.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Lisa Hurley. I'm with the law firm and lobbying firm of Smith, Ryan, Myers. The address is 311 East Park Avenue, and we're in Tallahassee. We are very honored to be selected by you to represent your interests. Local government work is near and dear to my heart. I was the legislative director for the Florida Association of County for 5 years. So I understand intimately the issues that you face at the local government level and the struggles, on the state level. They don't seem to appreciate the work that you do nearly as much as your citizens do and what you do to make our communities livable. So my one request for you is if you can save that galvanized pipe and those water samples so I can take them to Tallahassee on your behalf, I'd greatly appreciate that.
They're well traveled.
And we look forward to working with you. And we'll be back soon to discuss your upcoming agenda for the next legislative session.
Thank you very much for being here,
Thank you.
and safe travels as well. We look forward to working with you. Additionally, I would ask that the city attorney also be involved in negotiations, because once we deal with contracts, there may be some intricate details that may need to be looked at.
Also, as of right now, the difference between them and our prior lobbying firm is a difference of $5,000 increase.
Increase?
Yeah. That's the difference.
For state services only,
So,
no federal services. So at this time, does anyone have an objection to the city attorney being involved in the negotiation process as well?
I have no problem with that.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion as such.
Motion.
So moved. Motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor in a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to public hearings. Item number 11, an ordinance amending Chapter 86, Appendix A, water and sewer rates effective October 1st, 2018. First reading. Mr.
An ordinance of the city of Palatka, Florida, amending Chapter 86 and Appendix A, the schedule of the municipal code of the city of Palatka as it pertains to utilities, fees, and other charges related to utilities, providing for severability and providing an effective date of October 1, 2018.
I entertain a motion this time. Motion by Commissioner Kimball.
Second.
Second by Commissioner McCaskill. Mr. Griffith, do you have anything else to add?
Just that the input from the workshop was helpful. Logan did most of the heavy lifting, and our previous finance director actually assisted some. And I believe she has some information she wants to share with you with some changes and maybe further direction on how to minimize increases to certain consumer groups. Maybe have that final change brought back to you at a later date. Mr. Becker?
Yes. Hearing everyone's concerns and comments, we were able to go back and readjust. We took into consideration that the base seems fairly accurate where we need to be, that it's really the tier that needed to be adjusted. However, we can go back and forth a little bit between the two. What we did is we revised the tier structure. We got rid of the excessive use, and we based the cost now on, for each of the consumers on our cost. So that's what you'll see the normal to high is based around our cost, and that Jonathan spoke to earlier. And then we did the non-residential to have their own, so that per every 1,000, they're actually being charged the $6 also. So I know that the big question is, how does this affect the bills? So what I will say is that it's going to take a few days to look through the 5,000 bills to see how it drastically affects each of the groups. However, I did take a small sample. And for a family resident, if we go with a structure similar to this, you're looking at roughly $25 to $30 increase a month for water and sewer. And that's at 5,800 gallons a month. Let's see, a single resident that is in your lower, your conservation tier, they are actually going to, their bill would be going down about 10 to 15 cents. We have okay, so the jail, which was the big one, obviously, they're on the 10-inch meter. They would be going up around 7,000. And of course, this is just an average, so they're going to fluctuate a month.
In lieu of the 15,000?
Versus the 3 to the 15, it will go to the 7,000.
So 15 to 7. It'll be going from 15 to 7 under the current rate structure your new structure.
Because the old one was
You
approximately
said it's going up $7,000 per month.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. So what you saw was a current versus a proposed.
And the
so
proposed
this
was
is the
15.
in between. Right, the proposed
Gotcha.
would be 15.
And the new one now is 7.
It will be 3 plus the 7.
10,000.
So 10.
Yes, is what their new bill. That's what will, a month.
Right now,
And so what
is
you
it?
have
Right now,
to-
what
Basic
is it?
consumption.
Please ask, what is it right now?
$3,000 to $4,000.
So it would go up to then 10 to 11,000.
10 to 11.
Exactly.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's based on their consumption, which is 406,000 gallons at a 10-inch meter, which is the biggest meter. And so, like I said, these are numbers that we are comfortable with proposing to you. However, after looking at the bills, playing with the numbers a little bit further, we may be able to get that bill down. However, if you look further into like a salon or a cafe, a salon that uses 10,000 gallons would only go up $5 to $6. A cafe is going to, that use 22,000 would go up about 150, 160. And so this is where you can kind of put it into perspective. It's a cafe that uses 22,000 at a 5/8 inch meter goes up that 160. Home Depot uses roughly 25,000. Theirs will go up $1,000 versus the other. That is because their meter size is much larger than the cafe. So that's where your base rate comes in. And then somebody like Walmart who uses 225,000 will be roughly a $2,000 to $3,000 increase. It just, their bills fluctuate.
Is this handout meant to be an attachment to the proposed ordinance?
This is meant to be, yes, a revised version of the structure.
So right now, in the ordinance that's in the package, we have a different structure
Correct.
Or a different schedule that sets forth the
That's
structure.
fine with it.
So what you just handed out is intended to replace what's in our book right now, or what was in the,
Correct.
what was in the agenda package.
Correct, and then upon a motion to approve and move forward with the rate structure that is similar, we can come back knowing that we will not go any higher, only lower on certain consumers we will focus on under your direction. We can have some examples, have some work, but the problem is that right now, in order to secure that loan, to secure the funding, to get us in the direction that we need to go, I have to pledge something. So, this is based around our cost. So if we go any lower, we're not recouping.
What would our cost
So
be?
let me ask you a couple of questions. Okay?
Sure.
You have to make the application tomorrow.
I have to submit that.
Submit the application tomorrow, okay. But you wouldn't get approval of the loan for at least until after our next meeting?
We have approval of the loan. It has been a year and a half process, a year
I thought it was
process.
4.
Okay. All right, so that's sufficient for my questions. So my question is this then. If you get approval of the loan based upon the rate structure that you've just passed out, and then at second reading, because this is first reading right now, this wouldn't be effective until you had second reading, which I assume would be next month. What's our next meeting? 14th of June. If, on the 14th, the commission did not pass this on second reading, it dies then at that point. What happens to your loan?
We will not be able to collect revenues. So we will not be able to. Yeah, it goes away. We would have to start all over again if we decided to come back to this at some point, revisit, and then we would have to start from the very beginning of the process. Now, we can revise it. I can put in the application, these are the figures that we have had a first reading on. They could fluctuate. I can show and I can write and sign my name to that it could fluctuate. And then at that point, they would, with a contingent, move forward on that also. However, if we decide not to do this, we will not have enough money, and so therefore I will not be able to sign my name to that.
Okay, so if we were to go forth and approve this ordinance with the amended rate that we just got, and then if we direct staff to come back with additional ways that will possibly minimize the increase of all of that, I mean, again, we are at one of those positions to where we have to make a tough decision, and no decision that we make really at this point is going to be an easy pill to swallow. So if there's a way that we can minimize and get the application in versus us starting over the process and being another, 2 year plus, I mean, what are we?
But I think she said if we minimize, we won't be able to, you won't be able to sign your name on it because we won't be able to.
But at least you had if you at least had a placeholder right
Yes,
now,
a placeholder.
then it gives you the option. At least what I'm hearing
We
is
just
that.
want to submit the application.
That's
Right.
what, that's
Correct.
exactly, that's what she's trying to get at.
So I have a suggestion as to a alternate motion,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
Okay.
But I'm just going to say it right now. I'm not asking anybody to repeat it, but my suggestion would be that instead of instead of the motion that's in place, that you would move to pass the ordinance on first reading with the rate structure that's been just submitted to you as the attachment to the proposed ordinance, upon the condition that staff will, between now and the next meeting, look at the possibility of modifying the structure to address concerns that were announced at the workshop and that you've announced both here in the meeting today. I don't think those concerns need to be further articulated. That they already know the direction that they'd be going in. They come back at the second reading, it either is or it isn't acceptable to you, but in the meantime, at least she's able to make her application.
Gotcha.
There's nothing untruthful about that.
You got a motion on the floor already. You have to withdraw the motion that's on the floor.
So
I make the motion to
Go ahead.
go forth. I make the motion that we remove my motion.
You can just withdraw it.
I withdraw my motion as previously stated and go forward with the.
Are you making another motion?
Yes, sir.
In your motion? motion?
That we accept the amended, that we go forth with the ordinance with the amended rate as presented to us today.
Go in and we can take out a note or anything to deal with the $1.3 million storm damage that we've got in place, to deal with that money until we get a return back from FEMA, as opposed to spending down on our reserves to deal with some of these issues until we can actually come up with a concrete plan that's not rushed over a 2-week period of time. That's my opinion, and that's for the record.
And I do have, I see where you're coming from, but in the event, as Attorney Holmes said, if I'm correct, this is just the first reading. This is to allow us to go forward to, and I'm asking for clarification of myself. This is not a commitment to anything outside, because if we get to second reading and they come back with additional stuff, for my purposes, I want to verify that we could nix everything that has gone forth tonight.
And you can.
Okay. It still remains.
Well, and I'm still concerned about the rates and who will it impact. I mean, we've done things before as it relates, and we have not done our true due diligence in terms of making sure that if we implement something, then it's what you see is what you get. And I just have a discomfort with doing something within a short time period. Generally, you'll give something a time period, and then you'll be able to do your sample set. You do a large enough sample set that you know in the time frame that you implement, and you'll know, all right, you can predict what prices would be for whatever. But I think given the scale of what we're dealing with residents, we're dealing with businesses. How do we know based on your data?
I can kind of speak to this somewhat. We have a spreadsheet that has everyone's bills for a year and a half. Was it a year? I think a year time, a full year. That's over 5,000 accounts. So I have to go through, and that's why I said it's going to take a few days, and that's if nothing else comes my way, which is probably not the case. And I have to go through line by line and make sure that the meter is correct on the resident's rate, or on the resident's address, that all of the formulas are populating correctly. I have to play with these numbers. I have to take samples, and when I say samples, I'm going to take every customer who's in the residential and see what it does to them. If I see one that's off, I either know I have a mistake or their usage is a lot. And that's what throws it. So I do understand that you want more time, you want more information, and you want us to look into this deeper. I feel like that is my responsibility. So.
Go ahead,
Is there any way possible, and I know that you said it may take a couple of days, 2 or 3 days for you to do this, if nothing else comes and interferes, is there any way possible that we as commissioners can meet, have a meeting separately and find out and get this information prior to the next meeting?
Absolutely.
Or the next meeting?
Absolutely. I want to add a couple comments. One, Commissioner Cameron's correct. We can still go back at second reading and nix this whole thing and kill it. Mm-hmm. This just helps us get a foundation in the event we want to move forward. There are two things I want us to keep. Well, one thing I want us to keep in mind, and I have a question. One thing I want us to keep in mind is for the jail, the high user like the jail. The Deputy County Manager said tonight, if I'm not mistaken, I wrote this down, they used 551,000 gallons of water. So even if you make that number per gallon $5, it's still going to be around $83,000 approximately a year for them.
That would look great.
And that's using the $5 that they have that we're proposing now. Also keep in mind that in some contexts, the county is just not keeping that water for themselves. They're going to turn back around and sell that water. But keep in mind, so this is my question. So that's my comment was to keep in mind. So their scope is so large.
You said they're selling our water?
They selling that water?
At the park for
Wow.
So keep that in mind. So keep that in mind, but also keep in mind that the sheer number, that the 551,000 is so big if I told you I was giving you $2 for every gallon you use, if I was giving it to you, you see how big that number would be? So that number is going to be significant because the usage is so significant. So just keep that in mind. So my question to you is this. We've lowered what we're calling the one person, probably senior citizen, there's 0 to 3,000 rate, and all of the in the lower tier ones, but it does start to go up. What is a percentage or a dollar amount that you guys would be comfortable with for the higher users? An increase.
Just for the record, that's not a part of the discussion of the motion that's on the floor.
I think we need to workshop it because it's a lot of things that we to consider.
You got a motion on the floor, and the discussion has to pertain to the motion, not to a new motion.
So what's our next step? We just,
next
we're done with the questions that's related to the motion?
No, yeah, let's go ahead and approve the motion, then we can have this conversation.
Approve or deny.
Yeah, approve or deny the motion, then we can have this conversation.
Any further discussion from the commission?
Question.
Questions call. Roll call, please.
Mr. Warren?
No.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. McCaskill?
Yes.
Mayor?
No. Motion fails 2-2. At this point, we can continue discussion, or we can entertain a new motion.
I'd rather entertain a new motion.
Yeah,
discussion,
discussion, because I don't see where we're going wrong. If we go ahead and proceed with the motion, as the Attorney Holmes said, basically submit it to like having a placeholder. I mean, you know, and allowing Logan to go ahead and do what she said she was going to do. We can meet, even entertain a workshop, as Commissioner Borum said, you know, prior to the next meeting.
Right.
I don't see where we're going to go wrong because at the second reading, we don't have to commit.
I can always withdraw.
Correct. Is there an urgency to have the second reading in 2 weeks?
The final deadline, so June 1st is your interest rate. June 14th is the final deadline to get the application in without them turning it around and asking for revisions or more information. So if we get them to tomorrow was our goal, so that we could, one, lock in
the rate,
the interest rate, and number two, so that she has time. I've talked to her on the phone, Mandy's talked with her on the phone. She's very willing to help. She wants to help us out. However, we have to give her a couple of days, and the first, I believe, is what, Thursday or
Friday.
Wednesday? Okay, Friday. So if we get it to her, she can turn it back around and say, you need this, this, and this. This doesn't make sense to me. That's what we're trying to allow for.
So June 1st locks in the interest rate. And June 14th, is that, so June 14th is a drop dead date. June 14th is the last time before, or is it the last
It's
time?
the drop dead date. You can't submit anything past June 14th.
So we can have a workshop on Monday, June the 4th. You guys want to have another workshop on it to discuss it. As the attorney said, and I think Commissioner Campbell alluded to, you don't have to approve it at second reading. You can kill it. There's no obligation there. But I think in terms of our conversation, that'll help us out when we bring these numbers back. What are you looking more to see? Are you looking more to see those high-end users number come down? And then for you, what's acceptable number for the higher-end users? And if it's not that, for everyone else outside of the lower tiers, those middle business owners that have the 1.5 inch to 2 inch to 3 inches and those high users, what are you proposing? What's an acceptable amount that you would vote for and support?
My concern would be all users, because we do, like Ms. Rawls, she ran whatever, was it, you went online? Those are my concerns. And it's the same thing we did with another project, and the things were skewed. If we don't have things quite right, I don't like to rush and do anything without having a pretty good idea, feeling. I'm not going to make another decision that I'm not comfortable with, and that's not what I'm comfortable with.
We're the only one that can do so.
Right.
The other issue,
And I understand that.
I think the other issue is, I think the other issue is this. just doing a workshop here. The impact is all over this community. You gotta meet, because people aren't gonna come here. Everybody's not gonna come here. The majority of folks here are here for a different purpose. You gotta go out and meet the people where they are to let them know that they've been impacted. And I think one of the biggest issues is, we haven't communicated that information. And I can't necessarily say that 2 weeks is enough time to communicate to someone to say, hey, by the way, your water bill's about to go up $30 a month. We have angst with in some cases where with a 6.5% increases out there. But you gotta, I think, we dealt with the fire assessment, and I don't think we did a good job of putting the information out there in the way that it needed to be out there to the citizenry as a whole. And I think before we fall into that pit again, we owe it to our citizens to say, hey, this is how you're going to be impacted. And if someone can tell me today that information is going to be given to each residential person there, with them being able to have enough time to come in and voice or speak or ask the questions necessary, then fine. But we're not going to hit all 5,000 of those accounts. And
I have a question. So I have a question. First of all, why are we getting this information? And this is just a question that I've been had. Why are we getting this a day before something is to be due? That's not a best practice, and this is something that I think should have been on the radar a long time before tonight, or even for us being contacted before. But at this point, I think we have to come up with a secured plan, simply because the way that the vote just went is going to be a split vote again. So where do we go? How do we get there? And what's the best way to make sure that moving forward, of course we want to make sure that our citizens are well informed. We did fail, and that was one of the things that I was very much vocal about when it came down to the fire assessment fee, was the education component. But what can you assure me in the time frame, if this was to go any way or another, that we get this information out to the citizens? We've hosted workshops to where we asked individuals to come, and it was just us in there again. So how can we assure that everybody that has a skin in the game will be there, and we not just put off to say that we want to do something, just to put off, and then nothing really additional comes out of what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And I just need that peace and that comfort of knowing a timeline of what can we do, what's the plan, because I don't want to move forward and we just let it go back to whatever it is, and there's not a real concrete or not even a skeleton of what it is that we're going to do moving forward.
And Mayor, I understand what you're saying about communicating this information, but how much time do we need to get that out? And when we call for workshops, I don't think we're asking for it to happen here at the commission room. I think that we can host a workshop wherever we say that we're going to host it. But my question would be, what is enough time that you think, would be suffice enough to get the information out to the residents?
I'm not the one that's putting information out.
I know, but that was a concern that you brought up.
But I might have to take into consideration there's a holiday that's going to be taking place, so we already lose time in disseminating information.
Can I make a recommendation then?
But we also have to keep in mind, that we do have a deadline. I know, and I don't want the citizens to think that we're rushing the process, but at the same time, we have to keep in mind that we do have a deadline.
I'll make a recommendation. Based on what I can see here tonight, this issue is going to die. There's not going to be enough support to move it forward. And I think there's information on both sides that is pertinent. But as I've heard several of you say, if we're going to have time to educate the public, that's going to take a longer period of time. And if the cost for this project is higher, it's just going to have to be higher in an effort to educate them more. Because right now, this is going to end in a 2-2 vote, and I respect that 100%. And so what we're going to need to do is come back at a later date and flesh this out over a series of time and allow the residents, allow the business owners, as well as allow the commissioners to be able to digest it. And this is an opportunity that we're going to have to let pass us by. And that's fine. because I believe it's going to end still yet in 2-2. So I think that does give us more time to educate everyone, and I think that's where we're at this point. I would agree with Commissioner Campbell, and I end with this. I wish this could have been brought back sooner. And unfortunately, it hasn't been.
And I'll say this. Whenever you're talking about giving some, whether it's the sheriff's office with 500,000 gallons or not, when you're talking about increasing a water bill by $7,000 a month, that's astronomical to anybody. If you're talking about increasing the water bill on a small business that's barely making it $100 a month, it's a lot. And so, I mean, that may be the difference between having a part-time worker or not. I mean, as a small business owner, you got to take into account every penny that you spend. And while we understand that there are some things that need to be done, when you start talking those numbers to a lot of folks, it's difficult to say that we're going to make that decision in that manner. I mean, yeah, I understand the need. I understand significantly that there's a need for us to do something about this infrastructure. But I just don't feel comfortable with us moving forward in the manner that we're doing it without giving everybody a chance to say, hey, here's a snapshot of what your bill may be. And if someone can tell me that over these next few weeks that people are going to get that information and they're going to have a chance to come to the table to voice all their concerns, and we're not sitting around here scrambling for 14 days because, again, it's a 130-year problem. It's not a problem that just happened yesterday. And if the issue is that we don't have it, if we've drawn down on the reserves, then let's do something to get the reserves back up, as opposed to trying to rush to a solution to deal with a 130-year problem that's going to put us in a position where we're going to be handicapped, and we handicap our citizens.
We're going to have to do some more number crunching, because right now the utility fund makes water, as we know, between water and wastewater. So if you're not charging more for your service, it's going to be extremely hard to build that fund up unless one of the other funds loans the utility fund money with the hope that the utility fund at some point is going to pay it back. And so,
or the utility fund pulls it out for $706,000, and then you wait until you pull that note and you carry it long enough for FEMA to pay some money back, and then they draw down on the portion they got.
And we could do a note for it. We're going to be back here in the same conversation because you're going to have to pledge revenues to get that note. Okay. So you're going to be back here to another rate conversation.
I guess we decided.
However,
before we do that, let me finish this discussion.
However, the amounts are going to go up because I know we're talking right now the tiers, but I do want to make sure everybody recognizes as well that the base rate is going up significantly as well, based on the meter size, which is something new to everybody. So it's going to be not just the tiers, it's going to be the base rate. So not tonight, but at some point in the future, you guys are going to have to decide within yourself how much of an increase you feel like people should get. Are you comfortable with 10%? You comfortable with 15%? And then we're going to have to go back and tell you, this is what you can do with a 15% increase. This is what you can do with a 20, 25, and so on.
Based upon the rate structure that you just proposed to us, what's the increase in annual revenue?
It matches what we need.
What is that number?
What's the number?
In the water fund, it would bring in $3.7 million, and in the wastewater would bring in $3.5 million. I don't know the exact increase, Mayor. I just know the bottom. I apologize.
So we bring in roughly an additional $7.5 million. $7 million that we're bringing in on an annual basis.
Not additional. You're saying the other amount is already
Yes,
total. So it's not additional.
And what's our current? What are we currently bringing in? I just want to know.
I don't want to misquote, sir. I really don't. I knew those numbers offhand, but not the other one. I will tell you what it does is it funds a contingency emergency reserve fund in the amount of 20% of the total expenses. It also funds a 10% capital reserve fund that builds up on an annual basis, and it funds a 10% capital improvement program which we expense out on an annual basis. Those are the increases that we're discussing.
So you got 30% and you got 30% in extra.
Yes. If this doesn't go anywhere tonight, staff is still going to submit loan documentation on the revenues that have been pledged from the TIF funds, because you previously authorized us to do that. We don't want to lose the 20% forgiveness on even a smaller amount of the loan. We will continue to work on a rate structure and bring it back, probably most likely under the budget workshops, and work with you and work with some of the consumer groups. We will resubmit the SRF when the next cycle comes around, where they will be given forgiveness.
And you already got authorization to submit on the 2.4 million from the TIF funds, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. And so what's the number in that net revenue based upon the proposal we do that?
You got that number, Linda?
Jonathan, let me ask you a question. Jonathan, while I was looking for that, does this limit the projects that you already had planned?
The South District project, the South Historic District, South TIF, has got pledged debt service revenue from the TIF. The portion of the South Historic in the Central TIF District has TIF District revenues pledged. So no on those projects. Palaca Heights, potentially, we're going to use the SRF to match what the Water Management District could not do. But again, you did authorize us to submit an application for community development block grant. The short answer is yes, but we still have enough in the works to keep the momentum rolling. It will limit how far we can move through the distribution system in the next 3 years.
So the question still remains, when are we going to workshop, how we can move forward?
We're gonna, right now, the question is, what's the revenues proposed?
I think it's going to net an additional 1.5 million, sir.
In total?
In total.
That's water and sewer?
Yes, sir. And again, we can look at refining those numbers when we bring back the revised rate structure. You'll be able to see the budget in more detail in the workshop hearings for the budget as well as the capital improvement plan.
Any other questions? Any questions for me? So $300,000 roughly, well, more than that. $450,000 almost of that money is. $450,000 of that money is the contingencies that you got set aside.
Yeah, well, we found out this year as a contingency of about $650,000 was not adequate given the condition of our system and how susceptible it is to damage. So that was one of the things that we wanted to increase so that we could further protect the utility from unexpected repairs. But again, we'll continue to take your guidance and try and bring back a rate structure that is amenable to everybody.
Okay. Heard. Any further questions? Any questions? Any additional motions?
So one of the things we will do, starting in the June budget meeting.
1 second, Mr. Foster. Any additional motions at this time? No. Seeing none, motion dies. This item dies. And we move forward. Mr. Foster.
One of the things we'll do starting in June, we'll bring you back monthly where the utility fund is at. So you'll have an idea of where the utility fund is at health-wise on a monthly basis starting in June. We'll start to bring that back so you can see where we're at with it.
And that's where we should be all along, and I've been asking for that. I get quarterly report. I mean, I was getting them, but then they stopped, and it's like you got changes in personnel, and these are the kind of things that we need on a regular basis. It's part of the CAFR. The CAFR says that we should be getting these reports, asking for the reports. They don't come in, and then we get hit with stuff like this, and that's unacceptable.
So then when we ask for things like this, do we have anything in place when we don't? I mean, so to prevent things like this from happening again, I mean, if you've been asking for it, you've been on the commission for 4 years and you haven't got it yet, nothing was done?
I got the last report from
Matt.
From Matt, and, no. Mr. Folsom, he provided the last report on the health of the system, of the city's revenues.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the last report. Mm-hmm. But then I didn't know about the utilities being in this condition even though we know that they had issues all along as it relates to the infrastructure. So, but at the same time, we get hit with this, and it's just too short notice for me to make that kind of decision.
Also be aware too that we've said at previous commission meetings that, because you spoke about the CAFR, that our audit hasn't even been completed from last year. So recognize that what we presented is really our estimate even of where the reserve's at. It could be worse, it could be better. We won't know that for a while. But as we go through, starting in June, we will start to show you where the utility fund is at, because that fund is in trouble. And unfortunately, it's based on primarily the rates. So we'll do that for you. So for the whole commission, for that matter.
So technically, nobody from this point forward will be able to leave the commission meeting and say that they don't have anything to say.
Well, I won't say anything.
My thing is, let's explore options on the drawdown on the 706,000, which will allow us to have some fund in the utility fund.
I will say something.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a problem with this, the commission just not finding this out. About this situation. I mean, I know we were in trouble. I mean, but for it to hit us so suddenly like that, I know y'all are giving me confused looks, but I do have a problem. I mean, how is this going to be fixed? So items like this won't come up so suddenly, like the deadline for this application. If we just found out about it today and the deadline's tomorrow, I mean, what are we going to do different? What's going to happen?
I think
exactly.
When you have transition and turnover, you're bound, any business bound to have issues like this. We have transition and turnover. I really feel just as deeply as you do that we're having to bring this at this point, because we've known about this interest rate now for a while, and the date here. But I think when you have transition, you have turnover, you're going to get issues and things like this. It's my hope that we continue to
I was just going to say, I'm sorry.
It's my hope that we continue to educate you guys as soon as we're aware of situations like this where we can work. You have to keep in mind a situation like this requires a lot of data crunching to be able to come back to you with numbers that make sense for you to even make a decision. As you've seen tonight, people are not comfortable with the numbers that have already been presented, and the numbers that we present tonight are lower than what the state code recommends, and it's lower than what is it, ADWA? FRAW recommends as well, because we understand that we're trying to compress the rates so that we can help the citizens. It's my hope that in the future, the issues like this that we keep you abreast of and that you're aware of what funds are in trouble, that are not healthy. I think one of the things that would help us to go to Commissioner Bowen's front is to get those quarterly reports. And if you have questions, definitely call us. We will set up individual meetings to go through with you where the funds are at. I apologize that you haven't known where the utility fund was at a while ago. But we are here where we are now. And I think, like the mayor said, as we continue to move forward, one of the things we have to do is do a better job at educating everybody.
Thank you.
So that's you guys, that's the public, that's the citizens, that's small business owners, that's business owners in general, county, governmental units, so I'll make that clear to you.
Transparency.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
After the meeting.
No, through you.
What's your question? Come up.
Jeff Rawls, 11 Carter Street, Palaca. Has this body given any consideration to appointing a Citizens Advisory Task Force or a group of citizens that might know a little bit more about this to this body might? I promise you that the problems that you're having right now, it sounds like you're understaffed. Your staff doesn't know the problems, and obviously you guys don't. So maybe it's time to bring together a group of citizens that might have more input to this, that are professionals in this area. Consider bringing in, assigning a board, maybe 10, 15 people, and work out some differences. But I can tell you right now that recently the city put out for bids the relining of a couple of manholes that could have been replaced at a lower cost than what you're relining for. So what I'm encouraging you to do is maybe look at changing some of your staff, getting people in here that know what they're doing, and getting citizens that can have some input into it
and move this thing along at a lot more cost-effective rate than what you're looking at. Maybe you don't need to spend the $7 or $8 million. Maybe you're looking at $5 million. But get the citizen involvement.
I agree. And I think we've placed citizen task force on a lot of things, but I think what we as a body, and I'm talking about workers included, what we have a bad problem of doing is bringing something to the forefront and then allowing it, once we address it once or twice, that it kind of falls back. And I'm kind of the one that always kind of makes sure, okay, what are we doing? What are the timelines? What are the, and we just, and maybe, I mean, it's a staffing issue maybe, and we maybe need to look at that. So I agree with you, but again, we knew we were in trouble.
Right.
We knew we were in trouble from the day we stepped in.
Yeah,
So we knew that we were dealing with water issues, and I think that they've done a good job at trying to handle issues as they come to them, because a lot of things are being thrown at them. But one thing that what we have to not get used to is bringing something to the forefront. We address it in 1 or 2 meetings, and then it kind of falls back. And
What
it goes
about
back to
what about changing to a utility authority that takes
reports.
us off the plate of the commission? That's an authority that only focuses on water, sewer, or gas, or electricity. I know what that piece of pipe is because I work with this stuff. I guarantee you that half the people that work for the city of Pike wouldn't have a difference between DR18 and DR26 pipe. And that's where bringing people that have the knowledge in, let them bring their skill sets to the table, put them to work, would benefit the citizens and lower the cost overall. So
That's definitely a consideration.
I respect the fact that people might be outgunned in the position they're in, but using the Peter principle as an example or as an excuse for keeping people in the position they're in is not doing me as a citizen that pays over $5,000 a year in taxes on my personal property here. So, last thing I want to see is an increase in my water bill unless you can show me that I'm going to have a benefit from it. Exactly. Show me, show me the return on my investment. But I would encourage you to start from scratch. Utility authority, citizens advisory task force, get a different counselor in here. Get an attorney that specializes in nothing but this type of work, and have an autonomous authority. That would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Wolf.
Any reports, Ms. Robinson?
No, sir.
Chief? Mr. Griffith?
No, sir.
Mr. Becker? Mr. Trigger?
I'm happy and proud to announce that the March of Dimes food drive done by the Professional Firefighters Association of Palatka last Friday netted $1,500, more than $1,000.
I contributed a little bit to that. I just do it.
Mr. Holmes?
That's in addition to everything else.
Mr. Poston?
Yes, I have one big one to go to Commissioner Campbell's point about not letting things fall off the table. We had talked about doing a festival next year or some point in the future in place of the Blue Crab Festival. I would like for us to consider how you want to approach that for our next meeting. We'll bring that back. Some options that you'd like us to consider in terms of what do you want us to do, how you want us to plan it and structure. So just want to put that out there just for you to think about, for you to bring back at the next meeting, because we don't want it to fall off the table.
I thought we said we were going to workshop the whole festival idea and make sure that we meet with the county. And are we looking to be a Putnam County, or are we looking to host City of Palatka? And I think that will allow us to come with the direction of what we, or gauge our thoughts.
I think you also need to know that there are a couple of citizens groups and some local business owners who also are interested in hosting the festival. And Buddy Thompson indicated that they were interested in coming back next year. So you got all those things out there, and I think you're absolutely right. It has to be an open forum where those discussions come out.
So I think we can make the recommendation now that we set up a workshop. I don't think we have to come back to the next meeting. Just know that we come back with dates instead of direction, because we already have the direction. We had extensive conversation at last commission meeting as to what it is, that we need to do. And then it was also said that on June 12th that we have a meeting with
the county
commission.
So June or July?
July for what?
The workshop dates.
I mean, once we get with
The county commission, then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Am I right? Okay.
So set the meeting after the joint commission meeting.
Okay. Do you mind if I make it an item at the joint commission meeting?
Yes, number one.
Yeah, I think what we need to do going forward, and I've been asking for that forever, and work with Jonathan and and Terry before he left, as well as Matt, as it relates to various projects that we're working on. We need to know the status of these things. We need to know, status, costs, next steps, the whole nine, and we've been working on that. We need that master list. We need to know what, we have so many things that's happening, we don't know what's falling off, what's being completed. So again, if I can maybe task the city manager with that and provide that information to the commission so we know what's happening. We can't keep track of everything. We leave it, we come to a meeting, nobody's assigned the task to say, okay, well, hey, if this person, that person, and that person, give the task, timeline, next step, and the status.
Who else?
Project management. I'm used to it.
Closing statements. What's your closing statement?
Yes, sir. I'm done.
Commissioner Kessler.
None. Thanks.
Commissioner Campbell.
We have secured our 2018 interns for the city of Palatka. They have been interviewed and vetted. They are starting on Thursday, June the 7th, simply because that's the start of our pay. So we want to make sure that they get in and get that full week of pay. It's an 8-week program. Ms. Robinson and I have worked together along with Jobs for Florida graduates, Ms. Kelly First Boston Crescent City, Ms. Pam Brown locally, to kind of help give us direction of making sure that we have a curriculum and make sure that we actually give our students something that they can take away from the internship experience. We are still looking for partners. It's not too late if there's a business or businesses or that will be willing to bring on an intern. Let us know. We do have a few students that have not been placed. Mr. Synergy, we will get with you, and thank you so much for that. We actually have somebody that we think will be perfect in the outdoor sector. So definitely, if you know of an organization or you know of a business that could possibly use a helping hand, definitely let us know. We can make sure that we get with them. We did reach out to the SBDC, so we did have that all together. And one last thing, kind of going back to kind of quickly piggyback on what Commissioner Borum said, I think that we need to come together and identify the roles and responsibilities of all of our positions that we have here at the city. I know that we do have a flow chart, but I do think there's a lot of confusion and there's a lot of work that is falling on a few of the individuals that if we sit down and actually address what it is that they're supposed to do, it'll take the burden of extra work that they don't have to do, that we can kind of spread out. So roles and responsibilities definitely need to be looked at.
My report is on the week of June 18th through the 23rd. It's a delegation from Senegal that will be coming to visit Palatka. Tentatively, I think the proposed date is June 20th. They will come to Palatka and visit, really to look at the community and take a tour. They're coming in as a part of their delegation, their relationship with Cook University. There'll also be a roundtable discussion of mayors throughout North Central Florida in Orlando with the same delegation. And so we have that coming up on that weekend of June 23rd. So if you can kind of keep your calendars clear, I should be getting more information as to when they're going to come. If you can recall, back in May, I was supposed to go to Senegal to meet with them as well. But they'll be back here. They'll be in the States in the middle of June to kind of meet and to kind of discuss some things. They will look at this community as a whole as well. So there may be some opportunities there. Outside of that, we continue to move forward. I think the discussions today were good. I want to thank staff for putting forth the effort. It's a lot of time and work to go there. Unfortunately, this situation is 132 years old. We're not going to resolve it in a day. I think the comments, the suggestions, even the comments from Mr. Rawls as it relates to citizens advisory groups, we talked before about the oversight committee in place. And it's time for us to look at some of these things. When you have small staff, you find yourself in a position where people are really overworked. You got transition of 3 city managers over the course of a 4 or 5 year period. And what you end up with is different philosophies and change, and you have a lot of staff that's working over and beyond the call of duty. It's a testament to the commitment to the community as a whole. But we've got a lot of work to do. I think we've made a lot of progress, but there's more progress to be made. 132 years is a long time to try to fix that problem in a matter of 4 or 5 years. We'll continue on, we'll continue to plan, we'll continue to move forward. Thank you, staff, for the work that you've done.
Yes.
And let's just continue to keep the finger moving. We're adjourned.
That's information from Stan. Let me get the number.